Welcome to the Fearless Homeschool podcast with Makali, talking everything homeschooling, family, learning, and life. A space where we can learn and grow together because
why do it alone?
Hello and welcome to the Fearless Homeschool podcast. Another episode of season 1, and this week sees us chatting with Felicity Harber, better wanted to be known as Flick. And it's a funny episode because this was actually the first episode I ever recorded. And you'll be able to tell it was a little bit all over the shop from my part. I decided that I really wanted to air it because it's actually exactly why I wanted to record season 1. Flick discusses the fact that she has done the research about all the different homeschooling styles, understands them, and then has taken the parts from each that she knows will help with her son's needs. And really, this is what I want you to get out of this season. Not that you have to stick strictly to a homeschooling style because you like the look, the feel, or you think it'll work for you, but to experiment and learn about all of them so you can create your own homeschool for your child. So sit back and listen to all the giggles as we work through my first podcast and take on the wisdom that Flick has to offer. Enjoy. Okay, welcome Felicity Harber to the Fearless Homeschool podcast. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good, thank you. I'm very excited to have you. For those listening, it may not be in order, but this is my first podcast recording. And I asked Flick because I knew she'd be very patient with me. So let's see how we go. This season, like I've been saying, we're discussing homeschooling styles and approaches. It's something that I think is a really good and time-worthy thing to have a bit of research around and get a feel for them, because as you get to know your kids, you can get to know or use the right styles and approaches. So that's why I was inspired to create this podcast. And so we're going to listen to Felicity tell us how she uses different approaches and styles within her homeschool today. So without any further ado, do you want to just tell us a bit about yourself and what drew you to homeschooling first?
Yep, sure. Thank you for the introduction. As I'm Felicity, but I prefer Flick. It's easier to remember, and I only get Felicity if I'm in trouble. So let's stick with Flick. So I'm proud wife and mum to 2 amazing boys. They're 12 and 13, almost 14. Okay. So one's at home with me homeschooling, which we'll talk about today, and the other is thriving in mainstream school. So life here is a bit of a mix. We do, structure and school life, after school life, homeschooling, the lot. Yeah, that's probably a big thing that I'm passionate about, is providing an education that matches my kids. So one, homeschooling is his place, but the other is school. He's sports mad, he's academic. So yeah, we'll send him to school.
And you're going to talk a bit about that in one of our summits this year anyway, aren't you? And the mix of that. So that's pretty cool.
I'll talk about how that all works with one in mainstream a little bit later on as well, with regards to how that influenced our homeschooling. So yeah, and when I'm not homeschooling, as most of you know, the role as a mum is crazy. You've got sports, you've got meetups, everything like that. And when I'm not doing that, you'll find me nose deep in a book. I love listening to music, spending quality time with the family. So recently we bought a jet ski. So we've been spending a lot of time at our local lake with the tubes, jet skiing.
Nice.
This is awesome.
I've seen that on Instagram.
Yeah.
Been very jealous.
Yeah. So the kids love it. And it's really good because they're at that age where they're allowed to do certain things on the jet ski. Like they don't have to stick on the tubes and stuff like that. They're
Yeah.
allowed to spot and drive it with my husband who's got his PWC license, which is your jet ski license. So
Mm.
we've been making lots of cool memories out on the water lately.
Nice. And
And
there's a good age for that.
pardon?
And there's such a great age for that.
Yes. And it's important to push them out of their comfort zone too, because they've never really been like exposed to those sort of things either.
Yeah.
So it's good fun. It's good learning. Good learning. And it's not planned.
Oh, I feel like it's
And
going to be the theme of this podcast.
I think so. And the last thing that you probably need to know about me is we're a huge dog family. So we love dogs. And at the moment, we have a 1-year-old Kelpie, and she just adds to the chaos. So that's a little bit about me and
Tell
my.
you what, I don't think Kelpies, they take a long time to stop adding to the chaos.
Oh, yeah, she's crazy. She's just, and so I'm outnumbered with boys here. And I thought, oh, I'll get a sweet puppy, like I'll get a girl dog, and she'll be my gentle little thing. She jumps, she licks, but she is so clever. And that was one of the hugest draw cards to this breed is how smart they are. So
Mm.
a lot of my homeschooling leans towards teaching her as well and having our homeschooler teach her things too.
Oh, mentoring. Beautiful.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so thank you for letting us in a little bit to the world of Flick. And if we were to ask you, what is your main philosophy or approach for homeschooling, or what was the one you draw from? How would you describe your homeschool?
Our homeschool is a mix of everything. It's just a huge mishmash. So the main ones we really are influenced by is academics. So that's mainly just your English and math side of things. So we use, pretty structured for that. But we are pretty structured with how we do English and math. And then other philosophies that influence our lifestyle is Charlotte Mason. We do unit studies and very hands-on visual learning. So I just mold everything together and just use it as it suits us best.
How did you stumble upon it? So obviously every homeschooling journey, for those of you that haven't started yet, for those of you that are in the midst of it, is very different. It's very different to every family. Even if a family is a strict academic family and another family is a strict academic family, those journeys are going to be different. So how did you stumble upon, or who inspired you to delve deeper? How did you pick and choose those bits and pieces and how you did it?
Yeah, I probably have to go a little bit into why we started homeschooling to, explain. So Blaze, my homeschooler, he, as a toddler, was very sick. So he had RSV and it led to like medical issues, including hearing loss and things like that. So from a very young age, probably 2.5, 3, we started speech therapy.
Okay.
Still sent him to school. So Blaze did prep and majority of grade 1 in school. It was term 3, grade 1. He'd been sick with croup because that's just one of the things that we deal with after RSV. And croup leads to asthma attacks and weeks off school and stuff like that. So in the August, he'd had 2 weeks off with croup and asthma. And then I sent him back to school for a week where he was trying to play catch up on all the stuff that he missed. And I
Mhm.
know people are like, "Oh, there's not much for kids to catch up on in those early years." But in schools, they really pump the curriculum like hard. 2 weeks might not sound like a lot, but it's big for a kid that already had speech language difficulties, right?
Yep.
So I was like, no, I need to try something, and started watching like YouTubes and stuff like that. And obviously, Instagram, there's a lot of American homeschoolers.
Mhm.
So that was how I was like, maybe I give this a go. So instead of sending him back to school, trying to play catch up on weeks that he's missed in the week that he's at school and then getting sick again to only have another 2 to 3 weeks off school, I was like, no, let's look at what's available for him to actually get an education, because sending him to school, even though he was okay to go to school, he still wasn't 100%. And kids don't learn properly. They've got to catch up and then learn that week's lessons, right? So I was like, yep, let's do it. Let's have a serious look into this. So I jumped on Instagram and YouTube and just Googled like homeschooling and all this sort of stuff. And I was really drawn to a lot of Americans, because Americans just have homeschooling down, don't they?
They've
Like,
been doing it for a long time.
yes, yes. And what they've got to offer as well is ridiculous compared to Australia. Like, we're still very school minded, aren't we? With a lot of
Yeah,
our homeschool stuff.
I think we're
Like,
extremes here. I think we're extremes here. And we're still
yes,
finding our feet in middle ground or mixing, and we're still playing a lot with how we
yes.
approach homeschooling, I
Yeah.
think. Yeah.
Yeah. So I drew a lot of inspiration from the YouTube videos and Instagrams and stuff like that. But the main ones were Julie Bogart.
Mhm.
So everyone knows Julie as Julie Brave Writer. So she does lots of curriculum, like programs, writing programs, reading, stuff like that. And then another one that I was really drawn to is a lady called Jessica. She's known as the Waldock Way.
Yep.
So she's very eclectic too. And I just loved how she was with her daughter. So that's what drew me to that, because I could see similarities with her daughter's learning needs to Blaze as well, even though they're worlds apart. Yeah, I just latched on to those sort of things.
And
Yeah, what was it?
at the time, were they similar ages to Blaze, their children? Was that
I
easy to connect with them
um,
because of that?
Julie's got older kids.
Or the
So
kids, yeah.
her kids are actually having kids. What drew me to Julie was probably the fact that she was so generous and like just giving of her time. She spoke so personally. Like, she wasn't someone that was like, do this, do that, buy that. It's, I do this. You don't have to buy it, but I'm here to help.
Yep.
Ask anything, you know?
Yeah. Yep.
So she's very active on social medias. And that's what, yeah, I was like, yep, I need somebody that's that way inclined.
Yep.
They're not just out there selling their way. Like,
Yep.
it's not their way or the highway. So, yeah, that's what I liked about Julie. And yes, Jessica's daughter is, I think, a year older than Blaze. So, yeah, I found that connection, yeah, easy to
Yeah.
latch onto, you know?
Yeah, totally. And within that, obviously, Brave Rider, is that where you, because you felt like numeracy and literacy or maths and English, whatever we want to call it, was important to you to have structure, that academic side of your homeschooling. Obviously, Brave Writer gave you a bit of support in that. How did, sorry, forgotten
The
the name.
Waldock way.
The Waldock way, that's it. Went out of my
Yep.
brain. How did the Waldock way connect in for you in terms of
Yep.
that structure?
Both Brave Writer and the Waldock way actually use books to do unit studies or to do a novel study and stuff like. So what drew me to the Waldock way was her unit plans or her unit studies, very book focused. So
And that's
she's
where your
got
Charlotte Mason comes into it.
yeah. And so and it's only like a couple of books, right? So you're not having to buy a whole library and spend a fortune.
Yep.
Like the exchange rate makes it difficult at the moment. But yeah, I liked the fact that everything from Brave Writer and the Waldock way is super affordable. You don't need every little bits and pieces to be able to do it. And the other thing that I liked about the Waldock way unit studies is they have hands-on components as well. So with Blaze having speech language difficulties, I found he's a very visual hands-on learner. So having hands-on visual activities that reinforce what's being learned with that lesson from the book just reinforced his learning, and he was able to retain a lot of information.
Yes. And we're going to keep going, but as you can see already, from what I'm gathering, is that even though you're academic, I guess we need to, as homeschoolers, depending on where we are in our journey, is understand that academic doesn't need to be sit down with pen and paper all the time. Yeah.
Yeah,
Book
it's
work and
not.
academic are two very different things in
Yeah,
terms of
yeah,
styles. Yeah.
yeah,
Keep going.
yeah. And that's what led me to those as well. Like, I didn't want him to have to sit down like at school and just answer textbook after textbook, copy this, do that. Yeah, it's just
Totally.
hard work, isn't it? Like,
It's also
textbook,
it's not, yes, you're learning, but you quickly in
you sort of
homeschooling, I think.
you're force feeding information into their little minds and then expecting them to go, do I remember this? What is mum asking me?
Yeah. Yeah. And that's where what is learning to you is a big question. How does learning have to show up for your child? And I guess in my household, it took me as an ex-teacher a little while to go, actually, learning doesn't have to show up as something on paper every
Yeah,
time, as
yeah.
an example of something on paper. So, what is your take or understanding? You've jumped into this anyway, but add anything you want to. So, what is your take or understanding of the philosophy or approach of what are the main cornerstones of the philosophies that you use in terms of
Yeah.
homeschooling?
Yeah. So probably being able to blend a variety of philosophies and approaches and molding them to best suit Blaze with his learning journey. So the main things I like being able to focus on what he needs and
Mhm.
how he needs that to be shown to him, how that needs to be taught. I don't know if you could say taught because they're like learning themselves, aren't they?
Yeah.
Really? Like you're not up the front of the kitchen table or anything like that going, "Now this."
I sometimes try and do that and it backfires royally. And I'm like, why did you
Yeah,
even try that? Oh,
yeah, I know. And that's what I'll go more into that a little bit later. But that's like my boys learn so differently.
yeah.
My school kid wants that. Like, you
All
need
he's
to
been
learn
exposed
this.
to.
Yeah, that's what he knows. Whereas my homeschoolers looks at me like, "What are you trying to do?" If I did that to him, he'd be like, "Have you had breakfast? Like, woken up on the right planet, mom?" But the other thing
It's
I
so
like
funny.
about being eclectic is it's flexible. You can ditch what you don't want and take
Mm.
on the bits that you do.
And
So
sometimes it's not even about what you want. It's about
what they
this
need.
part
Yeah.
of this philosophy or this approach isn't working for my child.
Yeah. So we'll just push that to the side and we'll take the good bits that we want and just leave that.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and I think that's that comes with experience too, and we talk about that soon, don't we? But
Yes, yes.
yeah, I think yeah, flexibility to personalize the learning for him, and it is for him. It's not my
Yeah.
learning. Even though I'm learning with him, it's his. So yeah, and being able to just focus on him as an individual too.
Yeah. Oh, it's you're hitting the nail on the head. So how did you, and obviously you've introduced how you started homeschooling, but how
Yeah.
did you introduce or start homeschooling using these cornerstones? Like, did you go in going, there's some, throughout the podcast, we'll see there's some real strong Charlotte Mason learners, and there's very much unschooling was our way. Was yours that? Had you researched and you knew what you wanted to do, or has it grown? How did your
Um,
homeschooling grow on its cornerstones, basically?
I guess as I mentioned earlier, Blaze has been through speech therapy. He attended OT through school and stuff like that. So I already had a pretty good idea of how he'd learn best, right? So my initial goal was that we'd remove him from the school system for 6 months.
Okay.
We'd catch him up on all the stuff that he'd missed, build
I love
that
that.
foundation. That's what it is, isn't it? Like, that's how you feel
Yeah.
when you first just know.
Especially if you
No,
come out of the
no.
school system. Exactly right. Especially if you're
Yeah,
coming out of the school system, you're so stuck in that sort of scenario still, aren't
and
you? When you
and so many I think so many in this day and age are coming from the school
Yeah.
system, aren't they?
Yeah. Yeah.
And yeah, you need to get your I quickly learned that catching up isn't really catching
Okay.
up, right? We're on this completely different journey. My plan was homeschool for 6 months and transition back into school, right?
Yeah.
We're in our 6th year of homeschool. How do you think that catch up went?
I would suggest if you would assess him, and I know Flick very well. We have some catch ups, whether it be via voice message or on the screen. And she did a little bit of an assessment with Blaze in his maths, and when Blaze should be at school versus where he is sitting is actually light years ahead of his
Yeah,
peers if
yeah,
he was at school. So
yeah.
it's very
Well,
funny.
maybe we should talk a bit about that, right?
Go for it. Go for it.
Because my school child, he's grade 8, right? So he brings
Yeah.
home all of the homework, all the assignments and stuff. Although most assignments these days they do in class time, right? Anyway, my school child had homework sitting on the kitchen table, okay? And it sat there all week. And I'm like reminding him, do your homework, do your homework, do your homework. Blaze comes over one day because we don't often sit at the table, right, to homeschool.
Yeah.
And that makes me laugh too because when people ask, where do you homeschool? It's like,
In our home.
pick your place, pick the lounge, pick the outside grass, pick the bed for crying out loud. Like, wherever we're going to learn for the day, that's it. We don't always sit at the table. Anyway, this day, Blaze decided to sit at the table. And my school child's work is sitting on the table. He looks over and he's, I know that. I'm like, no, you don't. I do. This. And I'm like, what? Anyway, school child comes home and I'm like, dude, do your homework. It's due tomorrow. It like makes up part of your grade, right? Because homework now makes up part of school grades. Okay.
Haven't been at school for long enough during the day. Let's add.
No, let's force them to do homework to add more. Anyway, and because we're very sporty, the school child is very sporty. So, do we really have time to fit in homework? Let's throw in training, let's throw in refereeing for your sports and stuff like that. But anyway, he sat at the table that afternoon and he's trying to do his homework and Blaze pipes up, I can help you. School child, okay, you do it then. So here's my homeschooler that struggled, right? Struggled through prep and grade 1 with not only health, but speech language delays, like learning difficulties because he's taken so much time with being sick and being out of class because they're in reading assistance and reading support, which was only like 20 minutes a day, or 20 minutes a week, I should say. And he's sitting there doing grade 8 homework. Meanwhile, my homeschooler would be grade 6 at school, okay?
Yeah.
So I emailed my school friend. She works at the school that my son attends. I'm like, hey, so get this. Blaze is completing my school child's homework, right? Teaching him. She's, what else is he learning? And I screenshot a photo and I am teaching that specific thing to my grade 10 students.
Yeah.
And I wasn't sure whether I could believe it. And then when we started using Maths Pathway, I did the diagnostic and all these like level 10 things are popping up, like completed, like mastered. I was like, what? Grade 6, dude.
That's a passion for him, right? Like mathematics for my daughter is a real struggle. So her journey is a lot slower in that space for her. But I look at her artistic work and I just think she could probably put together a folio that would be a year 7, 8, 9, 10 standard if she wanted to. Yeah, because that's where she's practicing and spending her time a lot of the time in that.
Being
And it's
creative.
just, yeah. And if she was at school, it'd be the opposite. She'd get
and
an
essentially
hour.
you're using all those skills anyway. Aren't you? You're using
Yeah.
math skills in art because you got to get your proportions right. You got to get
Absolutely.
straight lines, curvy lines.
Yeah.
You've got to manipulate your chosen medium to suit what you're trying to do. Hey.
Absolutely. She's got a very mathematical brain, but it's just not in the same mathematical way that people would want it to show up at school.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
yeah, it's so interesting. But
yes.
I don't know where we were at then.
But then the 6th year. But yeah. But it's
so you started out as 6 months and you ended up homeschooling so far for 6 years.
So, yeah, we've just started our 6th year in October.
And for Blaze, is this something that you'll continue through at the moment, all the way through?
Yeah. So we've actually spoke about this as a family because homeschoolers will know that a constant question is, will they ever go back to school? That's number 2 question. Hey, how do they socialize? Number 1. Number 2, do you ever think they'll go back to school? Really?
And especially but they'll go to school for secondary, I think is the big, as part of that second question. And Blaze is basically on the precipice of that technically.
Well, he
right now
grade 7 in the new year.
Yeah.
But because we're already homeschooling, he's proud as punch, strutting his stuff. I'm already doing grade 7 work. Oh my gosh, kid. He's just proud.
And he has that concept, right? Where some homeschooling families, if there's not one at school and not one at home, and everyone's at home, the connection to the year level probably isn't as big, but he's seeing Big Brother and he's seeing what he's doing and he's understanding, wait a second, some of this learning I'm doing is just so above where
Yeah.
he's at. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
interesting.
So it'd be really interesting to see him alongside his peers.
Yeah.
Like, it'd just be,
Well, age peers anyway. Yeah.
yeah, the grade that he should be in. It'd be very interesting to see. Yeah, just where he's at, like with what he's learning, and his understanding and stuff might not be at that level, but who cares?
Yeah. And so
But
in that 6 years, because we were talking about cornerstones, in that 6 years, did you develop, because obviously, like you said, you came out of school, you already understood Blaze a fair bit because you'd had so much training, like speech wise and all that sort of stuff. Did you go in with really strict ideas on how this homeschooling was going to look,
yeah,
or have the cornerstones built or changed?
yes, as I said, homeschooling was meant to be a catch up, right? So my thing was like, yep, we're gonna bang out like your spelling and your English and get your writing on top and get your neatness like on the right track, and let's really focus on your speech, English, all that side of things. No. Did that happen? No. I even went back, like the stuff that we use. So we use a lot of the good and the beautiful for
Mhm.
maths. And that's where we started with language arts as well, or English in Australia. I liked that they were so focused on sounds and like really reinforcing what you'd learnt the previous lesson.
Yep.
Because as a teacher, you know that even though kids get an hour for a specific lesson, so say they're doing English, that lesson goes for an hour. Do you get an hour of teaching time into
Oh,
that?
no.
I
No,
know.
most of it's just
Right.
like patrolling. It's
Doing
literally
it.
controlling
Yeah.
the class sort of thing.
Yeah.
Yep.
So that was probably the biggest shock to me, is how quickly we were getting through stuff, right? So it's like, is this normal? Are we doing this right? Am I doing homeschooling right?
Mm.
Is there a right and wrong way to homeschool? Not really. Yeah,
No,
that
but I'd
was,
say 6 hours a day, 5 days a week is, if you're trying to do that in your homeschooling, look, go for it if you want. But I'd suggest you probably do it wrong, because you
exactly.
shouldn't need
We
that.
were
You shouldn't
finishing
need that time.
we were finishing our day at 11:30 in the morning. So, and
Probably
that's what,
starting it at 10.
yeah, exactly, exactly. I could just hook in, and I was like, "What are you doing? Am I doing this right? Am I giving you too easy work?" Like, and then I really had to go back and think, why are we doing this? And it's to build that foundation of
Mm.
learning. Go back and redo the things that you missed while you were sick, while you couldn't hear clearly, while you couldn't talk clearly. So, yeah, I think the initial first 6 weeks, it was, surely I'm not doing this right, hey? And he was loving it. He was loving it. He was doing everything I put in front of him and stuff like that. And it was just me that was like, clearly this isn't enough. What more can I do? He needs this and he needs that. And yeah. So that's probably what changed. Even though I knew how he learned best, it still threw me for a loop, right? Because
Yeah.
I was like, we need structure. We need to do this between this time and then move on to that and then have lunch and then, but
Yeah, and if you have come in at thinking academic and thinking classical learning, to a point, there is that as part of a classical or academic homeschooling
yeah,
family. Yeah. And there you go. Everybody has those questions. Am I doing this right? Especially when you think, wait a second, they take 6 hours at school to do this? We'll leave our chat with Flick there, and we will come back for our second part of the chat later in the week. If you're interested in more, jump onto our Fearless Fables newsletter, where you get to find out a little bit more about my Fearless family and any exclusive offers that Fearless has. like the Teen Summit that is coming June 10th to 12th. So check out the link below to find out more about the summit. Until next time, happy homeschooling. Thanks for joining us on the Fearless Homeschool podcast. If you'd like to stay connected in between episodes, check us out on socials at Fearless Homeschool. And if you'd like to hear more about our Fearless Homeschool journey, sign up to our Fearless Family Fables newsletter. But don't forget to subscribe so that you're the first to know when a new episode drops. Because
Why do it alone?